because it is our distance learning day, so I'm going to be making a lot of videos today because I have the whole day with no kids here to talk to me. So it gives me all the time in the world today to try to go through your little note cards that you gave me and see what you think you're struggling on and try to give you some extra help on those things. So that's what I'm doing. All right. So I am here for you and I'm listening to all the little things that you think you're having trouble with, and we're going to try to go through those. One of the main things that I got on the note cards and that I saw you had trouble with on your unit review that nobody really was doing well on was volume. And I understand that we do a lot of different geometry questions. So we have surface area and area, which both require you to find base times height. And then surface area is when you count your faces and find the area for each and add up all of those for surface area. But in volume, it's completely different. So a lot of you are getting those two confused. Volume formula is simply length times width times height. Three things for volume. You have to know your length, your width, and your height, and then you'll find your volume. You do not have to count any faces in volume. No faces at all. You just have to know length times width times height. Now let's start back at the basics with volume. All right, we know it's length times width times height, but you also need to know how to count to see how many cubes are in a whole prism. Remember, volume is filling something up. So whenever you're talking about volume, you're talking about how much something is filled up with usually liquids. So when you want to know the volume of something, they're normally talking about liquid, like in this water here. Volume would tell me how many ounces of water fit inside of this. That's what volume measures. So let's look at this simple prism right here. All right, we're going to start basic, super simple. So this prism right here, you can see tiny cubes, right? A prism is made up of a bunch of cubes. So in order to count to see how many cubes are in this prism, you would have to do what? Find how many are in your length, how many are in your width, and how many in your height. And what do we do with your length, width, and height? You multiply those numbers. So let's count these, okay? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 cubes for my length. Then on my width, which is how fat this thing is, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 cubes on my width. And then you've got to count, lastly, your height, right? So we are going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for your height. So now you've got how many cubes are here, how many cubes are there, and how many cubes are there. So when you multiply 4 times 3 times 6, that doesn't tell you your volume immediately. That just tells you how many cubes you have inside of here. So if you multiply these, we've got 12, and 12 times 6 is 72. So we know that there are 72 cubes inside of this prism. That's all it tells us. We counted our cubes and it tells us that there are 72 cubes inside of this prism. But how do we know the volume? How are we going to find out the volume of this whole cube? All we did was count the cubes so far. We have to know the side edge length of each tiny cube, right? So if you know the side edge length of each tiny cube, then that will tell you what the volume of the whole thing is. So we can make something up here. Let's make up that each tiny cube has a volume of 1/4. Let's just do that. So this one has a side tiny edge length of 1/4. What do we know about cubes? We've talked about cubes before. In a different video, we talked about cubes. I think we found the volume of a cube in a different video. So a cube is made up of squares, right? And every single square has all of the same side edge lengths. So if you know one side of a cube, you know them all, right? We've got to find the volume of each cube before we can find the volume of the whole thing. So what is the volume of this tiny cube? How do you find volume? Length times width times height. So you would multiply right here. I'll erase that. You would multiply 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/4. And that would give you the volume of this tiny cube. 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/4 is 1/64. That's the volume of each cube. So in order to find the volume of the whole thing, you would have to take the volume of each tiny cube and multiply by how many cubes there are, and that would tell you the volume of the whole entire thing. So let's do it. Let's do the volume of one tiny cube, 1/64, times 72 goes on top, 72 cubes. So that's 72 over 1, and that gives you 7. I'm messing up. 72 over 64, right? Because you multiply straight across. So 72 over 64, right? It's kind of a big number. I don't really want to go to this side over there and put my 72 inside my long division symbol. So let's back up a little bit. What could we have done to make that a little more simple? Look at this problem right here. What could I have done? I probably should have did my butterfly method and simplified that. So if I grab my butterfly wing right here, I look at my number 64 and 72 and I try to simplify. Simplify means you make smaller or divide by a number that goes into both. What number do you know that goes into 64 and 72? Think about it just a second. I think it's 8. So if we divide 64 by 8, you get 8. Cross that out. If you divide 72 by 8, you get 9. Now we multiply straight across. So now we have 9 over 8 as our answer, which is 1 1/8. So our volume for this whole entire prism would be 1 1/8. Any questions on this one? Let me know. You can email me. Let's see if we have anything else. Let's do a problem without looking at it. Boom. All right, our prism on this one has 126 cubes. Okay, it has 126 cubes. We already counted the cubes. We know how many our prism contains. Each small cube has a side length of 1/3. Each small cube. The height of the entire prism is 2 1/2. What is the area of the base? Pause this for just a second. Think about what you know, all the things that you know, and see if you can figure this out. Just pause your video. Remember that you've got to multiply the side edge lengths of the small cube first in order to find the volume of the small cube. After you find the volume of the small cube and you multiply it by how many cubes there are, you'll get the volume of the whole prism. And if you have the volume of the whole volume of the prism and you have your height, you can divide your volume by your height to get the area of the base. Here's my work already done. We've got the side edge length of the small cube was 1/3. 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3 was 1/27, which gave us the volume of one small cube. And then we knew that there were 126 cubes total. We multiplied that by the volume of one cube. That gave us the volume of the entire prism, right? So I'm looking for an eraser. I don't guess I have one. All right, let's erase. We'll just erase this one. Should have got an eraser. Oh, my fingers are going to be dirty. All right, so we've got the volume of the whole prism, right? You've got the volume of the prism. The volume of the prism was 126, a different marker, 126 over 27. That's your volume of the whole prism. And the height was 2 1/2, right? So we're going to divide the volume of the whole thing divided by the height, which was 2 1/2. And that's going to give us our big B, area of the base. You always divide your volume. So what does that mean? Volume goes on the left. Volume goes first in the calculator. If you're going to use your calculator, you got to know that this goes first because it's being divided. So this is 126 over 27. And if we change that up, remember, 2 times 2 plus 1 gives us 5 over 2. How do you divide fractions? Keep, flip, change. So we're going to change to multiplication, flip our 5 over 2 to 2 over 5. And then we're going to have to simplify. This is not very fancy, not very nice, because look, we have nothing that we can simplify on the butterfly method with 126 and 5, and nothing we can simplify with 2 and 27. So we're just going to have to do that hard work. 126 times 2, I want to make sure, will be 252. 27 times 5, make sure again, is 135. And there's your problem, which is really ugly. And 135 is not going to go into that 2 times, because I know that 135 times 2 is 270. So it is going to be 1 whole time with a big old fat remainder on top and 135 on the bottom, which is super, super ugly. But you got the point, right? All we have to do to find the remainder is subtract those two, and you would get your remainder. All right. Not going to do that right now. All right, listen. Volume, length times width times height. Count your cubes. See how many cubes there are. Always divide your volume of the whole thing by the one that you have, right? And that's about it in a nutshell. All right. Remember the golden rule? Write this down if you're doing your composition notebook. There are no faces in volume. You never count faces. So if you're doing a volume problem and it says volume, you got to read. You can't just look at a picture. Then you should not have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 written out to the side of your work. You just do length times width times height. Remember to always divide that volume by either your height or your area of the base to get the others. All right. I hope this helped just a little bit. Y'all have a good day, and we'll do another video soon. Bye.